There are some people that throughout their career have done a few things, and then there are some people in their career that have done a few things. This person is the latter. It's my pleasure to introduce Darren Smith. He's going to be talking about the licensing playbook for games, NFTs, and the metaverse. He's got it all. Darren, please welcome.
Thanks, everybody. It's so great to be here. Congratulations on attending here the very last day of the conference at lunchtime. It's great to see so many people out to learn about licensing for games, NFTs, and the metaverse. I'm Darren Smith. I'm the VP of Product at Epic. And at Epic, we're the leading B2B NFT platform, and we work with AAA game platforms and giant entertainment IP to create in-game NFTs and marketplaces. And we have a great number of years of experience as a digital licensing agency putting brands into games. Our current client roster includes giant entertainment brands and games such as Tencent, Universal, and Garena, and lots more. So a bit about me, I'm a video game industry veteran. I've been in the industry for almost 30 years now. 20 of that was spent at Nintendo, where I worked to develop game platforms like the Nintendo 64, the Wii, the 3DS. I worked on a game with Mr. Miyamoto, did some things with Pokemon too. So it was a great career there. But in 2018, I joined Epic as the VP of Product with a mission to bring NFTs into games. So today I'm going to give you something at the execution level. Ooh, how does this clicker work? Firstly, I'm going to talk about the psychology behind the NFT hype and why are people paying big bucks for what some people say is essentially just a bunch of pixels on a screen. Next, I'm going to talk about the business of licensing and really what the opportunity is and our digital future. And lastly, I'm going to give you our licensing playbook. It's going to be our step-by-step guide for those of you who are interested in incorporating IP into your games and products. So let's start with this. Justin Sun recently spent over $500,000 on a digital rock. I'm sure everybody's heard about this. Justin is a crypto millionaire. Of course, maybe it's not so absurd that he would spend that kind of money on an NFT. But you also have Steph Curry, three-time NBA champion with the Golden State Warriors, spending lots of his own money just buying a Bored Ape and joining a growing list of athletes who are prominent NFT owners. So the question is, why are these people getting involved? Why is somebody like Steph Curry flaunt his Bored Ape on Twitter and even make it his profile picture? Well, it's simple. It's because the people pay real money for virtual goods for the same reason they buy any consumer commodity. It's for status, identity, membership, class, and performance. And really what Steph Curry is signaling to the rest of the world that he's in the know. He knows what NFTs are. He's an NFT owner. He's part of crypto. And now this has really just become part of his identity. So does this really sound familiar? It's the reason in psychology behind the reason why people buy name brand stuff to begin with. Brand affinity is really a way we signal certain messages to the rest of the world about ourselves. Are you a Ferrari person or are you a Tesla person? Are you an Apple user or an Android user? And when we're really talking about brand name items, we're talking about IP licensing. And the term licensing, I'll read you the dictionary definition, is the granting of rights to use another party's intellectual property in your own products or services in exchange for financial considerations, typically a payment or royalty. So when you make a piece of digital art, that's your IP. You own that creation. Now you can sell and monetize it. And this idea of ownership is the same as whether you're part of the creator economy, whether you and I are creating that original piece of art, as it is for Disney and Marvel. It all starts out from the same origin. Some creative person comes up with an idea, they develop it, they monetize it, becomes a brand, and that we all know and love. So as you can see, everything IP, everything NFT is IP, and it's really all about licensing. So at Epic, we meet with lots of different licensors and educate them about NFTs. So I wanted to share how IP owners really look at NFTs. So for licensors, the main thing for them to understand is that NFTs are a completely new product category for them with some really interesting features that make them extremely powerful. And first and foremost is that we can verify ownership. We all know this. An NFT in a wallet is like a bearer certificate. You know that somebody actually owns that item. Second, NFTs are digital, which means it can represent anything. It can be a JPEG, it can be an object, it can just be a reference to something else, which makes it really powerful. And that means we get to do cool things with your merchandising strategy as well as your marketing engagement with your customers. So when you combine all these elements, the brand affinity, a new asset class, and a new product category, you come up with something really powerful. And this offers some endless possibilities for you and how you incorporate IP. It's really up to your own creativity to how to make that happen. The next big area of opportunity, I'm sure it's been discussed here plenty here this week, is the metaverse, and licensing and plays a hand in that in NFTs. So NFTs will be the unifying feature that makes the interconnectivity in the metaverse a reality. Really, it's going to be the fabric of the metaverse itself. It's the digital stuff that's open, transferable, and permanent. And licensing and using IP in the metaverse may be a really extremely important part of your business strategy and may actually be a necessity as you bridge from the real world to the metaverse. NFTs provide that bridge from Web 2 to Web 3. So you see Starbucks in the real world, you see Starbucks in VR, and NFTs put that together, you connect the dots there. So as promised, let's dive into the quick playbook to help you get some IP. This is our 4-part licensing playbook. In chapter 1, we're going to talk about the field of play. In this chapter, we're going to discuss what licensing is a little bit more and how it uniquely operates. Second, we're going to talk about the players in the space. The first player you should know about is your opponent. Know what motivates them, and you'll be in a better position to negotiate better deals. We'll also talk about a quarterback in this scenario and why that role is very important. Third chapter, we'll talk about strategies. We'll discuss whether or not you're ready to use IP, and if you're not, how to get there. And lastly, the end game. Here's where we're going to start by asking why you're doing this in the first place. So, let's talk about the field of play. What is licensing? I gave you a dictionary definition earlier, but in short, it's really paying to use someone else's IP in your own products or services. And this sounds pretty straightforward, but in all practicality, it's not so straightforward. The not so well-known truth about licensing is it's not, what you know or even how much money you have, but it really is about who you know. Licensing is interesting because it hasn't been disrupted before. It's been around for decades. It hasn't been disrupted by the internet because it's all relationship-based. Getting the right access is key, and this requires a relationship. And naturally, licensing is also about legal contracts and rights. And so that's kind of the short history of licensing. But how do we look at this in the future? Blockchain is certainly brings something to the table here. Blockchain and licensing are very compatible because licensing is about contracts and rights. And the smart contracts give us a way to improve the creation and enforcement of those rights and minimize friction and reduce some of the overhead. So that's a future we're working on at Epic. We're at a core a tech company, and we're using tech solutions to solve some of the complex workflow in licensing. Next, let's talk about the players, and I want to talk about your opponent, the licensor, the IP holder. One of the most important things to do is to understand the mindset of the licensor. You're going to be in a negotiation with them, and you need to know what their biggest motivations are. And you might think money is the biggest motivator. And yeah, it's definitely important, it's a consideration, but as you work with maybe bigger IP holders, they may be more interested in their reputation, securing their reputation. Also, different licensors have different strategies for how many deals they do at one time. A good analogy here is some might be more like Robert De Niro, appearing in something only every once in a while, versus Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who's virtually in everything, everywhere. I mean, if you walk out to Times Square, you'll see him on a billboard out there, I'm sure. Also, a lot of different licensors have a different bandwidth capabilities. They might just be overflowing with opportunities that are brought to them. They might not have time for what you bring to them. There's also a lot of structural issues inside the licensor that you might not be able to control. It could just be a one-man shop. It could be a family-run IP, or you might be dealing with a giant conglomerate with a licensing committee. So it's not a simple situation. Every IP is different, and you really should understand them the best you can before you sit down and talk with them. And that brings us to the next player who plays an important role, and that's the quarterback. The quarterback is really thinking about and doing all this activity for you, the one that's going to help you navigate all through this maze of licensing. Licensing is pretty complex, so you have to have a plan. Who's going to get you that access to the IP owners? What should you be paying? What are the terms? Who's calling the plays? And this is really under the quarterback's authority. This could be internal to your company or external. Internally, you might hire somebody with this expertise and all the connections and try to build out your business development team that way. Alternatively, you can make it external by working with a licensing agent. And there's certain advantages to working with a licensing agent. It's much like working with a real estate agent when you're buying a house. A real estate agent does all the heavy lifting and finding the right properties for you. Similarly, a licensing agent will speed up the process and maybe bring you insights that you didn't know have before. So is a licensing agent necessary? Of course not. You can buy a house without a real estate agent. You can also license IP without a licensing agent. But that depends on your situation. It's entirely up to you. But long story short, it's important to consider who's going to be your quarterback. And if you do work with a licensing agent, we recommend finding one that has a track record of success, that knows the industry you're in, one that's performance-based, and it's not charging you too much and without delivering some sort of value. But here's a quick reality check. You may not be ready to become a licensee. Why? Because it's not always about the money. Brands are looking for the right fit, the right reputation, the right timing. And if you don't have that, it doesn't mean you can't get there. There are ways you can do to improve your chances. So the first is to build a track record. The more IP you work with, the more trusted you will become to the licensors. Start out with small IP and you build up a reputation. The next is start by gathering some data. Build some compelling metrics for engagement and other KPIs beyond just the money. And then be open-minded to the IP that you want. In our marketplace, some of the greatest, best, most successful collaborations are where there wasn't an exact fit, and that can actually be quite fun for the consumer. Lastly, you can join forces. You don't have to go it alone. Epic has been successful in putting brands into multiple games at the same time under the same campaign. So you don't really have to go it on your own. You can divide it up among different games. Let's talk a little bit about crossovers. The name of the game with IP content is content. There's nothing more exciting than new original content. And crossovers are really an awesome way to create new content and new merchandise, and they make great collectible items. These crossovers happen in a number of different categories. It happens in music when artists collaborate with one another. It also happens in fashion. As an example, Supreme and Louis Vuitton did a great fashion collaboration. And it also happens in games. Games companies do it a lot because it's exciting and unique. And it's definitely an idea you should explore as you work with IP. So let's talk about the end game. One of the first things you should do when you start down the path towards IP licensing is ask yourself, why? Why do you want to invest in licensing IP? What's your goal? In our experience in working with hundreds of game companies and marketplaces, the things we hear the most are, number one, to increase user engagement. More marketing tools come with working with brands, so you have lots to play with. Number two is to increase user retention. Fresh content that the brand provides keeps the players coming back. And number three is to increase monetization, of course. Name brands sell, and it's an opportunity to capitalize on that. And then lastly, another reason to use IP is to boost your game's profile. This was going to create more credibility with your company. Working with big brands definitely adds the perceived value to your consumers and to your investors. And think about all that before you start down the path with IP licensing. So, to summarize the IP licensing playbook, first, you need to know and understand the field of play you're in. Second, you need to understand the players, pick your team, especially that quarterback role. Number three, execute your strategies, especially if you aren't aren't yet prepared to license IP, make sure to prepare yourself to get there. And lastly, start with the end in mind. Ask yourself why. So thank you all. I hope you learned a little bit something about the business of licensing and how to make it work with your project. Please check out some of the cool stuff we are doing at epicprime.com. And if you have any questions, I will be outside with my colleagues, Owen and Winston, in the lobby. If you have any questions about licensing, we'd be happy to answer them for you. Thank you all.
Right on, right on. Darren, I have a question. I was speaking, what?
Go ahead.
All right. I was speaking to some of your colleagues earlier, and I said, hey, do you have any embarrassing stories you can tell us so I can prep? And they're like, no. But they reminded me of something that is really interesting, and for anybody that is in New York City, the Nintendo store.
Yeah, that's right.
Can you tell us what's at the Nintendo store?
The second floor of the Nintendo store has kind of a museum of all the game consoles that have been made by Nintendo over the years. You can go up there and see some of the things that I've worked on.
So humble. Some of the things I have worked on. Some. Like I said, there were at the beginning, there are people that have done some things in their career, and then there are people that have done some things in their career. Let's give it up for Darren for everything he's done. I mean, we wouldn't be here without people like him and continue to go to the future. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.